Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone from wherever you're joining us. Thank you for joining us on behalf of the Embassy of Switzerland. I want to welcome you to our November 2021 edition of the Swiss Film Club. And this is also our contribution to Films Across Borders, Stories in a Changing World. My name is Emily Buss, and I work in the public diplomacy section at the Embassy. This film club was started during a time when it was difficult to gather together in theaters and was intended to create moments of shared viewership, but also to continue sharing the fantastic work of Swiss film artists, like the film that we've viewed this month, and to support these film artists. And this film, as I mentioned, is not only part of our monthly Swiss Film Club, but it's part of the Films Across Borders 2021 festival. This is an annual collaboration that showcases critically acclaimed films, documentaries, and short films from around the world. And it's co-presented by American University in partnership with a number of cultural organizations and embassies around Washington, D.C. And each year, the series focuses on a distinctive and timely topic, and I think this year's is especially timely. The focus of this year is Stories in a Changing World. And I'm happy to be joined for this discussion of Zurich Diary by the director, Mr. Stefan Haupt, joining us from Switzerland. I'll introduce him just briefly. He's a native of Zurich, and he has worked for many years as an independent film and theater director. He's had many, many successful films throughout his career, and in 1998, he founded his own production company, Fontana Films, in Zurich. His feature film debut, Utopia Blues, from 2001, was honored with the Zurich Film Prize and Swiss Film Award, and another film of his, The Circle, from 2014, won the Panorama Audience Award and the Teddy Award at the Berlinale Film Festival, as well as the 2015 Swiss Film Award. And this film, Zurich Diary, is his most recent feature. It debuted last year at the 2020 Zurich Film Festival and also was shown at the Solothurn Film Festival in Switzerland at the beginning of 2021. So with all that said, I'm really thrilled to see that there was so much interest in this film and in this discussion. And thank you, Stefan, for joining us all the way from Switzerland. Before we get started with the questions, I do want to remind audience members that if you're watching on Crowdcast, you can ask a question either in the chat or if you click the Ask a Question button below. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Stefan, we'll start at the very beginning. You wrote and directed Zurich Diary, and it is a very personal story. So I'm wondering what inspired you to make this film?
First of all, thanks as well from my side for the invitation. It's very nice to be part of this series now. I remember in 2008, during the financial crisis, I was really struck with the thought, realizing how little I understood of all that is going on in the financial world. And originally, I wanted to make a film on this whole situation. What is around money? I started investigating and reading books, and after 1-2 years, I realized that's too big a subject for me. I'm not into it so that I would want to spend so many years really going into that. But at the same time, I realized that this is not the only topic that is sort of overwhelming us, that is too big for our understanding, that there are so many things. And by that, so came this idea of trying to somehow reflect on our personal situation nowadays. And in my case, with family, with with the need, of course, as anybody else, to earn the money to live, but also with the will to understand or get involved in this life and realizing so many things. So and then I felt that this title, Zurich Diary, would capture quite a lot of that, because that diary allows you to have a spot on this and on this and on this. And I tried to narrow it a little bit on Zurich, because I mean, the subject is too big anyhow.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And that leads very well to my next question, which is that one of the most striking things about the film, I think, is that, and it's really a cinematic essay, I think it's referred to at one point in the film, that you capture so much of what's happening in the world, not only in Switzerland, but these global challenges, climate change, migration, refugee crisis, gender equality. And so, how did you choose to focus on these particular themes with everything going on in the world? And did you have those ideas before you got started and that guided your filming, or did the focus shift as you were filming?
The focus didn't shift that much, because I really wanted to sort of look around myself and try to reflect on what is there everything, with this feeling of being in this rat race, or in this hamster wheel that we're all in, it seems to be. And of course, like, you could choose one refugee story, very moving, very touching, and very important to tell. But at the other side, there's also another subject, like what is happening to democracy, what is happening to the medias now, what is happening in the climate change or so. And I felt that it could be interesting to really not go into one thing really deep, but to try to show what is all beside each other, and also my personal life to it. Having children that grow up and you want to support them, and in what way can you do this? Having parents in an age where they are close to dying, having a grandmother that had mentally problems in their olden days. This is what I was, and I did many things just by intuition, or really following my interest, and not having a real strict project plan organized. I'll do this and this and this. Yeah.
And this film also, you shot it over a number of years. And so I imagine you must have had an incredible amount of footage. How much footage did you end up with? How was your editing process? What kind of decisions did you make? And then I'll add, we have a question that's come in from the audience asking, was there any point in the production where you thought you might not be able to put the pieces together in the end?
Yes, there was. Yeah, I never counted really. I guess it was about 100 hours of material. A lot of family material, but all in all, once I counted it, I had at least 60 talks with people that interested me, that could have been in the film. I ended up filming 33 interviews, and these interviews were very often between 1 and 2 hours. And now in the film, you have 22 people. And so like 11 of them didn't make it into the film. And it was a very nice thing, and a big chance that I knew the editor from 2 previous films. So we were quite relaxed in just knowing we need time to put the pieces together. And one important work was to try to boil down all the interviews to some lines and some moments that we thought that's really very nicely said, or that's some important thing. Then I collected texts that I wrote over the years, and I asked a friend of mine, an actor, if he could read it for me. This was about 2 hours of texts, narration that is in the film that I had. Another friend that also had worked with him already, a musician, I showed him some things and asked him to, if he could just add some music, like he gave me 1 or 2 hours of music that he made, inspired by the things that he had already seen. And then we really started off and put one thing and would ask ourselves, what could be interesting now? And after this, where could we jump to? Or would we like some music now or some images? I also took the camera myself and went into Zurich and filmed quite a lot of these images. I filmed them myself. And so we were just floating. And I think until now it's difficult to me how to say what is the film about exactly and how did we do it. But it had to do with our trust that something at the end will come out, hopefully, because otherwise it's not something I think you could do as the first film project.
Right.
Of course you can try, but it helped us to have some experience and some patience by waiting how it would evolve.
Yeah. Well, and I think it feels very organic as a film, very relatable, because it's the sort of thought process and the way that the rest of us experience the world as well. So I think that comes across very clearly. You mentioned the number of interviews that you did, and of course you interviewed family members, but were the people outside of your family included in the film already in your community? Did you get to know some of them because you were doing this film, or how did they come into your orbit?
I think most of them I knew already. Like one guy, I went to school with him, to high school. The refugee lives with another person I knew already from some other film. The man that talks about the Bullinger letters from the Reformation time, he had helped me a lot with the Zwingli film, the film on Zwingli, the Swiss reformer 500 years ago. Chaplin Badran, the politician that talks about the ground and Immobilien, also the building and all these questions. I knew her for quite some time, and I knew the good work that she's doing. And a few ones I really, by reading the newspaper or so, or through colleagues, I thought that would be very interesting to get to know them and have them in the film. Or like Tim Guldimann had been the Swiss ambassador in Berlin, and I had gotten to know him when the Circle won the prizes in Berlin, and there was an invitation. So I had some kind of relation to all of them.
Yeah, it's great. And we actually have a couple of follow-up questions from audience members as well. Did you do all the interviews with your family yourself? And also, how did they respond, especially your children? How did they respond to the final product?
No, I did not do the interviews by myself. I had also a cameraman and a sound engineer with us, which made it, of course, a very special occasion, situation. But at the other hand, I enjoy very much having the possibility to do both documentary films and also feature films, fiction films. And all children had been part in fiction films already. So they were quite familiar with the process of filming and didn't bother that much that they were filmed, except my oldest son, and I could perfectly understand that he would say, I would not want to be in a discussion with you. So at the end, they are quite happy with the result, which is a nice thing for myself as well. Yeah.
Good. So this really seems like a time capsule of the last several years.
Mhm.
As I mentioned, the current global challenges leading up to and including the pandemic, which is ongoing. And I was particularly struck by the ideas that are mentioned in the film that the world is always on the verge of collapse, but that we sort of think we know what to expect. So it's this precarious balance. And do you personally find that historical perspective, and particularly speaking with people who have these different perspectives, helps make the future a bit less scary or uncertain? And did you were you thinking about resilience in all of this? Is it a film about resilience?
I guess not for all of us. Yeah. If it has this impact, I'm happy. Of course, resilience is a fantastic thing. Um, I think we are so packed into our own life that it's very difficult to really have an objective view on are we really on the verge of collapsing, or is it just I mean, people all through the centuries were sure that the end of the world would be very close, and got ready and for the final countdown. Yeah. On the other hand, I would say it's we're really not a good situation, as a climate change is no longer just a phantom or so. It really and it will get worse the years to come. Who knows what science all of a sudden will come up with ideas how to reverse it or change it. I don't know. I think at the same time, we as human beings have great possibilities to influence our life, but it doesn't look good at the moment. And like quite a few friends and people share the feeling that and say 10 years ago it wasn't like that, was it? But then again, 10 years ago or a little bit more was this financial crisis where all of us thought this is it's almost the end. And like for people in Greece or so, it was tough like hell. Yeah.
Yeah. So it always depends on
I'm not a historian. Yeah.
on your perspective and your generation and each. Yeah, it's very personalized, I think, which the film is as well. And on that note, we have another audience question. Did you find that in the end, the film informed and expanded your personal political viewpoint? And has it made you more able to process and accept all of the news we're exposed to today?
What I can say, it was a helpful thing trying to reflect and also reflect somehow in public on these questions. And I had quite a few talks, long talks, following some screenings with friends or with people that I don't know at all. And there was often this feeling of mutual understanding, or I know this situation, or also people telling me, quite often older people than I am, telling me, I'm so happy I saw this film. I realize I'm not the only one having all these thoughts. And this feeling of community, of being able to communicate, express, give words or images to feelings that we have, this was a comforting thing somehow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's very important. And to see how different people in different situations are processing the same information, I think really appeals to our shared humanity.
Yeah. And then I thought, I mean, the topic of mirror appears quite often in the film. And for me, for myself, the film itself other films as well, is also always some kind of a mirror to the audience. You see things that you know already. The things that you know already reflect more on you. And so I was quite surprised. I had people telling me, how could you make such a pessimistic film? I never thought you were so pessimistic. And other people would tell me to exactly the same film. I it was so strengthening to watch your film. It's so optimistic to see the young people, and thank you. I really leave the cinema with another feeling or so. So this is very funny. It's the same film, yeah. Yeah.
How interesting. I want to shift just a little bit now to talk about Zurich. This is the Zurich Diary, or a native of Zurich. And for an American audience who might not be familiar with the city, can you speak about what, for you, makes it so special, especially from a filmmaker's perspective?
I cannot really say what's so special for a filmmaker's perspective, but I can say for me, it's very special about Zurich, the size of the city, because it's both very small and quite international and big. I mean, many things are so accessible. And with the bike, I'm almost everywhere in 15 minutes. And there is, in terms of education, medicine, culture, nature, and so on, it's an unbelievable amount of possibilities to get different things, what are interesting to you. And then, because of the size, I don't see you at the moment, but I keep going, right?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay. So I think this is really very special and a very, very high quality of life.
Yeah. And I imagine because it's a larger city and it's international, there are a lot of stories to tell.
Yeah. To be honest, now I have difficulties to understand you. It's I only see the Swiss cross on your instead
Oh,
of your face.
all right. Well, we'll keep going. Do you hear me well right now?
I hear most of what you say, yes.
Okay. But yes, speaking of Zurich, there is a very large arts and cultural scene, and because of the international community, a lot of stories to tell, I would imagine.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. Well,
And
we're
of course, at the
almost.
same time, what is not only Zurich, but other big cities also, it's it has some heavy problems because all the rents, the prices for houses go up like crazy. They double within 10 years. Be, and this creates the danger that the the middle age, the middle class people and the low class people are forced to leave the city, and the city gets too clean and too sophisticated and too elitarian, and so this is a problem other big cities have as well, of course.
Right. Well, we're almost at the end of our discussion. So if there are any more questions from viewers, please go ahead and submit those now. But Stefan, for you, I just have a couple more questions. The first one, the final one about the film being, if there was one main thing, or maybe a couple of things that you wanted audiences to take away from viewing this, what would it be?
Yeah. I'm just to ask again, I can see myself on the screen
Yeah,
very good, but I cannot see you, and I don't know if the connection is bad, if I could change
yeah.
anything, or maybe you,
I
because
still
also
see
when you talk,
you.
it's very difficult to understand you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I still see you and I hear you
Okay,
well, but I'll try to speak up a bit um,
good.
for our connection problems. But if there is one main thing you would like audiences to take away from the film, or maybe more than one thing, what would it be?
I think it's really not one special subject like the financial crisis or so. But it's I would love if people get the opportunity of sort of look into some kind of mirror and reflect their own life and reflect our everyday situation. I think that many of us have this being overwhelmed by too many informations, for example, by too many topics at the same time. And that these 2 hours watching the film can give you the possibility of sit back and sort of, yeah, focusing your awareness of on what is going on.
Yeah, I think that's important and very powerful. And I will say, from my perspective, the film creates that moment very well to think about the world, especially right now. And then my final question for you, Stefan, is what is your next project? What are you working on now?
I'm working on 2 different projects. One is the last 1.5 years in the life of the composer and musician Johann Sebastian Bach. So he was in Leipzig at that time, and how he approached the end of his life. And I'm quite often in Leipzig or in Berlin, and I grew up in a family where music was very important. At the age of 20 or so, I did not know if I would turn into music. I played the oboe and took singing lessons, and I conducted the choir for 5 years. And Bach was sort of the total ideal, and so. And that's very interesting and nice to do. So here we are in the process of improving the script. And another project which I like also very much is also developing the script for a film based on the novel by Max Frisch, a Zurich writer, worldwide known, and his novel Stiller, which I think it's a fabulous book, and it's very interesting to work on this as well.
Wonderful. Well, we will keep an eye out for your next projects, and hopefully at some point in the future we can have you in person in Washington for a discussion of one of these.
I would be happy to come.
Yeah. Well, Stefan, thank you so much for joining us from Switzerland. Apologies for the technical issues.
No, it's fine again.
But, okay, good. It's the reality of day to day now, I think. But thank you for taking the time to answer our questions and for sharing your film and your insights. So thank you on behalf of the embassy and of the audience. And also, I want to thank the audience for joining us, for your continued interest in our films. And I wanted to encourage you to stay tuned to the embassy's newsletters and social media channels at Swiss Embassy USA for information about our next programs. And with that, thank you, Stefan, and I wish you all a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, nice meeting you.